Life is Art is dedicated to bringing you insightful commentary on art, culture, and life. To support the podcast, feel free to make a monetary donation or purchase our official Life is Art merchandise at the link in the description. Your donation helps us to reach a wider audience and helps us to gain traction in the world of social media. Thank you for your viewership and support. Life is Art. Art moving at the speed of life. Life moving at the speed of art. So I actually had some alone time and some downtime today, and I figured I would do something that I normally don't do. What was dressed as another rom-com, which is my least favorite genre of movies, I decided that I would watch The Materialists. And part of me is glad that it was something I decided to watch. And part of me, it made me shudder because it confirmed what I already knew. And film as an art form is something that can make you feel very uneasy or make you feel joy or terror or just whatever films make you feel. And this movie was a confirmation of what I believe most people that are looking for love or open to love, what they are hoping that it's not. And the premise of the story is pretty much the premise of anybody who's swiping left and swiping right, and it centers around a matchmaker. She's successful enough to live independently, but she comes from a poor background. And she happens to meet a man that's very wealthy, played by Pedro Pascal. I mean, what isn't he starring in these days? The character that Pedro plays is a man that is so immaculate in his presentation, his pedigree. He's considered by by most standards to be a unicorn. He's successful. He's handsome. He's well spoken. Well spoken. He has incredible fashion sense without being dressed by his wife or girlfriend. And by all counts, he should have no trouble getting a top tier 10 out of 10 woman. And remember the words 10 out of 10. I don't want to forget that because what constitutes a 10 out of 10 human being, I believe, is what I found most disturbing in this film. However, it was also a truth about society. Opposite of Pedro was Chris Pine's character. And I don't remember everybody, all the actors and actresses' names in this movie. So if I omit anybody, it's not that I'm being misogynist or anything like that. It's just that I don't, for one, it was hard enough for me to even get into the film. Chris Pines plays the love interest of the matchmaker. And his character is, you can clearly tell that they love each other and that they're in love. But the problem is that they're poor. And she expresses her guilt over their breakup because essentially it had to center around his lack of income. Basically, Chris Pine's character was a waiter at a higher end restaurant, and he's never in a position to take care of him or her or himself. And that right there is something that people in many relationships deal with. Money is always an issue, and it's always an obstacle for people that are in love. Well, in this situation, a lack of money defeated them as a couple. Enter Pedro Pascal's character. He decides that he wants to date the love interest of Chris Pine, the matchmaker, and they begin a romance. But you can tell from the opening of their first serious interaction at dinner that he is more interested in a partnership. And everything is contextualized as a partnership. There is no hint to humanity. However, later, you will find that not Chris Pines, but Pedro Pascal's character wants to be loved for him. Ultimately, what we find out is that there's a very, very different reason for why men and women interact with one another. And it's more complicated than just men wanting intimacy, physicality, and women um, wanting provision. But those are the basis of desire. Ultimately, Pascal's character wants somebody that he can trust, somebody that is smarter than him in certain areas, someone that he can learn from. And of course, he would like some of that as well. And she undersells herself, not really understanding why somebody of his stature would select her. She's on the upper end of I believe I don't know if it's her early 30s or mid 30s or late 20s. I can't remember. But the profile seemed to be older men, 40, they were dating younger women. And this does hold true in society. That's what's going on right now. And in that way, this movie was very reflective of society as we've built it right now. And the lack of permanency that's felt throughout the film, it was jarring, but it was also, I don't know if it was a wake-up call or a call to make the adjustment for what society has made romance, love, and relationships into. And, I'm probably going to be all over the place with the review, but ultimately, the man that wins in the film, and this is very different than a lot of romantic comedies, because normally the person who wins is the person that the woman is in love with. This film does something that turns the genre on its head. The compatibility factor and focus on what men and women want, even though they're completely different things, was at the forefront of the film. She did not want to be poor. He did not want a woman that he couldn't trust and that he couldn't learn from. And he completely dismissed the fact that, all of the attributes that she was talking about, she didn't have. She said she grew up poor. She didn't have this pedigree, all of these things. Even her anti-pitch to him was framed in a way that she understood as a woman. Everything was based off of something that was material. And in his mind, he was like, those things don't matter to me because I already have those things. That's not what I'm looking for. And many men of means are not looking for the very things that women value. Your education, the number of degrees you have. Most men don't care, which is something that was refreshing to see in a rom-com. 9 times out of 10, and I'm just critiquing, when you watch a rom-com and you see a male character, they're usually two-dimensional cutouts, and some of them are hairy-chested and hairy-faced women instead of actual male characters. And a lot of these romantic comedies are written by women. So their point of reference is feminine. Although this movie was directed by a woman, she had a pretty legit understanding of men. And this entire universe of high-value men and high-value women was interesting because I see it all the time. And very few human beings are complete. And the way they treat marriage and the sanctity of it is, well, if it doesn't work and you don't like him, you can just divorce him. There's nothing that's at stake. Although these people want marriage, although they want relationships, they present versions of themselves that couldn't do anything except have a fling. have a tryst. There's no legs to have an actual relationship. And it even calls into question what a relationship is in these modern times. You have modern women and you have modern men. They're very different than women and men in the past. And some people who are more progressive might celebrate that, but it also comes with its own its own pitfalls. And this film looks at that. Um, I think even though sometimes it was very heavy-handed, it's the beginning of the deconstruction of the modern romantic comedy. And I think you can see some films such as George Clooney in Up in the Air, which made an attempt to show the male perspective as far as somebody that was adverse to commitment. This movie made it sound like why even commit? Um, Everything there was superficial, and as far as what even quantified a good human being, it had nothing, especially with the male prospect. It had nothing to do with him being a decent human being. It had to do with very, very superficial attributes, such as height, such as whether he was making 150K a year. And in one of those scenes, there was somebody that said even though he only makes 150,000 a year, it also showed the disconnect from reality that many women are experiencing right now. And it also showed the superficial nature of men, um, with a gentleman that was a client of the matchmaker. And he was like, well, I want a woman that's older. This guy's like 40 something years old. And when she said, okay, well, this woman, I have the perfect one for you. It was one of her clients that failed at that was in a failed attempt at a second date with a match the matchmaker made with her that didn't work out. And even when the guy from his perspective that was dating this 39-year-old woman, he he cited that she was fat and old. She was only 39, and when you saw her, she wasn't fat. When the matchmaker brought this to this 40-year-old gentleman, very handsome man, and she said, okay, well, you want older? She said, well, she's 39, and he stopped her in her tracks. He said, I was thinking along the lines of maybe 28. So even what, in a weird reality, what he considered older or younger was very strange. Hold that thought. I'm going to continue this this review, but I want to take a brief moment. I got to turn off the stove downstairs. I just forgot. Okay, I'm back, and I don't want to lose my train of thought. Um, I think where did I leave off at? The handsome gentleman that was looking for somebody, his point of reference was completely different than what another person might consider to be too old. Um, and I think that that's, metaphorically speaking, it shows the difference between men's frame of thought and women's frame of thought, which I thought was very interesting and honest. Um, the only issue I have with a lot of the scenarios in the movie is that they were exaggerations of what's really happening as far as male-female relationships and dynamics go. I think that the bulk of it is true, and that dynamic with the man being 40 saying, "I want a woman who's older and more mature," and his point of reference was somebody who's 27 or 28 years old, while shocking, illustrates what a man thinks. Men date for completely different reasons than women, and women date for completely different reasons than men. And their level of attraction is dictated by something that's completely opposite of what the other thinks. Now, moving on into the film, um, Pedro Pascal's character, I think, was was one of the more interesting characters because he was presented as a man that knows the game and he's no longer interested in love. But he's not a villain by any stretch of the imagination. That was one thing that was good. They didn't simplify him to where he was this, this dark anti-hero guy who, because of whatever reason or another, he's now this stone cold lover man. That's not what he is. He was tempered by all that had happened to him. And on paper, he was the unicorn. And that was from a statistical standpoint. That wasn't from an emotional content standpoint. And if you pay attention to the movie, they completely remove those things that in our minds would make us want to be with someone. When you think about marriage, you think about finality. You think this is the person that I'm going to close my eyes for or watch him or her close their eyes for me for the very last time. We have all these romanticized notions of what marriage and long-term relationships are, but we live in a very temporary world. Love is temporary, and it's not actually love. It's a series of boxes that we check off so that we can be socially acceptable. I've never seen a generation where everybody wants somebody who is 6'2". I have never seen where it had become so prerequisite that every single woman, if you look at society, I'm not saying that that's true, but I'm saying by societal standards, I've never seen a generation more of women more obsessed with height. I've never seen a generation of men more obsessed with whether or not a woman can cook. Even though we live in times completely different than what our fathers did and our mothers did, we still have these quirks that, for whatever reason or another, hold value. Now, moving on with the film, and while I'm saying doing this review, I want to say the name of the actress in this film. I have to look her up. I don't know why I can't remember her name, and I want to be respectful to her because I mentioned the other two actors in the film. So I'm gonna look her name up really quick. Just hold that thought. Computer is always slowest when I need it to move fast. Dakota Johnson is her name, and she is the main character of the film. So no disrespect intended when I couldn't remember her name. It was just an on-the-fly review. This is just a day after having watched the film. The character, and I keep going back to Pedro Pascal's character, and I do this because he represents a unicorn, and his counterpart represents an average, disadvantaged man that's in love. So one is afraid that they're not even capable of love, but they're capable of an arrangement, but they have the means to make that arrangement work, monetarily speaking. And the other one has the love, but doesn't have the monetary ability to make the character that Dakota Johnson plays happy. So Chris Evans represents the everyman. And I don't think and this movie was very correct, a lot of relationships don't end because of love. I think they end because of us forgetting the importance of love. If you don't do relationships right, and I don't want to get on a soapbox, but if you don't do things with an understanding of the value of love, you end up in an ivory tower for a prison. You end up with a picturesque princess of a wife that you have nothing in common with. But the other question can be asked is having something in common with a person enough? And this film really explores that honestly, without really vilifying anything. if I have a criticism about the outcome and the resolution of the film, it's the character of Chris Evans that he's playing. That character has one flaw: he's poor. And in old romances, in movies where you had let's go back to the Titanic. The Kate Winslet's character left her well-to-do husband, who hadn't actually done anything wrong, for the allure of Jack, a broke artist who really, and okay, it's obvious. I like Jack because I too am an artist. I think I have more of a vision for the future than Jack did, monetarily speaking, but I understood Jack's character. As cheesy and cringe as the Titanic is now, she left her husband, who turned out to be a villain and was vilified, for the sake of the plot moving along, but she was bored. And that's an underlying theme of no-fault divorce. And this movie really touches on many, many different things from different perspectives. My critique of the film comes with the deconstruction of Pedro Pascal's character. He has decided to live within the confines of the rules of the game of dating. He has removed love from the equation and is now looking for his own form of usefulness in a potential partner or mate. And that makes him, in some ways, villainous. But the natural propensity for a filmmaker that's about to take a chance but just doesn't take a chance is what this director does. She reels it back in, and somehow his set of rules and his set of boundaries um, are turned into obstructions to this love that could help him feel whole. And the purveyor of that love is the matchmaker, the main character. So his finely constructed um, parameters of interaction are ultimately called into question and lightly called wrong, because love will solve everything. And the movie was on a collision with absolute truth, but this one small thing, the softening of the character that Pascal was playing, wasn't really based in reality. And I assume that there has to be some kind of escapism for the largely woman audience um, to connect to the movie and feel good about the movie, because after all, that's what rom-coms are. I don't want to see an action film with a bunch of talking. I don't want to see a dialogue-driven film with a bunch of action. And that's fair. That's extremely fair. My problem is a point of view that works for a man doesn't have to be constructed. A point of view that works for a woman doesn't have to be deconstructed. And the deconstruction and softening of Pascal's character and turning him into an insecure man who we later find out he's 6 foot tall because he had his legs broken and he had the height procedure done, that it's purely manufactured. We learn that the person inside isn't the person outside, and that he wants to be loved for who he is. That's his ultimate goal and desire. And while that is lovely and it's beautiful, if being loved for who you actually were was the point that the movie was trying to make, then the character that Chris Evans played would have never lost the character that Dakota Johnson played in the first place. because by all measures, he was a perfect man for her. They made sure to make her light up in a way that she didn't with Pedro. Um, and they also illustrated that moments were special with the Chris Evans character. Moments were test driving with the Pedro Pascal character. I'm not going to say who necessarily wins out in the end, but the illustration of how it ends up in reality is really, really explored. And I guess we have to ask ourselves a question. Do we really value happiness with a person, the way a person makes us feel in the face of adversity? Or are we more in love with a life free of adversity and more along the lines of something that is mutually transaction driven and stable financially? Um, I don't think that there's a right or a wrong answer, but love doesn't save the day. But we also discovered that neither does money. Perhaps it's an amalgam of all of it. Most of us will never get that answer because we don't represent the unicorn, male or female. It was an interesting movie, and it was something that actually kept my attention. I remember watching rom-coms with various um, date mates, and I hated every second of it because they all ran the same route. And I anybody that knows me knows that I like structure, I like order, I like predictability. Um, but I don't like linear human being um, as far as linear human beings as far as being characters in films. I like three-dimensional characters. And this was as close as I've seen to three-dimensional characters in a movie, and particularly a romantic comedy, as I have in a long time. While I probably will only watch it one more time um, with the right person, I'm probably never going to watch this movie again. But as it stands, it was refreshing. I give that movie an 8 out of 10. I took two points off because it wouldn't go the yard. It leaned into sentimentality when in real life, I rarely see that sentimentality. This is your guy, the Brave Artist, with a movie review. And it's been a long time for Life is Art to have a movie review. I think I have one up or one done that I haven't put up, and I don't know why I didn't put it up. Um, what was it? I can't remember what it was that I did. I think I did. Well, it wasn't even a movie review. I did something on Robert Eggers, one of my favorite directors. Um, and I'll get that one up. That's a completely different thing. It wasn't about any of his films in particular. Anyway, share, like, or subscribe, and let others know about our small but growing channel. Until the next time, everyone take care.